and I'm joined by my good friend and ex-colleague Soumyodeep Mukherjee. But today we are going to discuss an interesting topic which are happening in the minds of the CXOs or the decision makers in an industry, coming from the industry and the experience, professional experience that we have, both my ex-colleague and friend Soumyodeep and myself. We are going to present a key area which CXOs are really investing on, which is the way the generative AI has able to transform the industries, right? Making sure that what are the key guardrails or how to enhance the privacy and security part of it as they are able to accelerate their AI transformation journey. And that is one of our key focus in these presentations. Before we dive deep into some content, a quick introduction about us. Give me one sec. Soumyodeep, you'd like to go ahead for a quick 10 seconds introduction?
Sure. Yes. So I'm Soumyodeep. I am currently working as an associate director of Genmab, which is a biotech firm that specializes in cancer research. And my research interest is primarily in the area of data, AI, and machine learning with generative AI, especially focusing around their application in the space of healthcare and biopharma. Thank you.
Thank you, Soumyodeep. Myself, my name is Meethun Panda. I'm an associate partner. Right now, I'm based out of Dubai, but have a lot of experience in North America. Typically, bringing deep expertise on technology, data, and AI, solving a lot of complex business and technology transformation programs for Fortune 500 clients across diverse industries, healthcare, the pharmaceutical, the retail, CPG, financial institutions, and animal healthcare, you name it. And I have also the privilege to have supported a lot of CXOs, CTOs, the CIOs, or chief data analytics officers to solve their AI challenges, to help them setting the right foundational steps so that they will be able to accelerate the AI journey. That said, now there are 4 areas that we'll discuss as part of the agenda. First, we'll start with some kind of a generative AI context and the trends that we are witnessing right now. Every week, we see a disruption happening. Every week, we see a new model, sophisticated models are coming up into the market. And we as a human now are obsessed about improving efficiency, the productivity gains, the hyper-personal, and so on and so forth. The next, we'll move to the RAG-based, Retrieval-Augmented Generation-based architecture. Because if we look at our experience and what is happening in the industry landscape, 80% of the use cases, AI use cases, generative AI use cases, which have been developed or industrialized or which are in the experimentation phase, are based on the Retrieval-Augmented Generation-based architecture. Something that we'll talk about, we'll give a quick primer on what that is. And the third is the most critical part of that, something that we'll discuss is how to enhance the privacy and security along each part of your pipeline, along each part of your journey on your AI transformation, right? What are some kind of key levers that you must do? What are the key dimensions that one organizations must do so that they will stay ahead of the curve of the AI transformation journey? And finally, we'll also tell one real life use cases on the healthcare side, and we'll take up 1 or 2 questions if time permits. This is kind of 4 quick agenda we have. Now, we are now living in a once in a generation kind of disruption era where we have the generative AI since the advent of generative AI from November 2022. And particularly last year, what we have seen in the industry is a lot of experimentation that have happened. And now we are living in an agentic era where a lot of the things are being facilitated by the agents, starting from the communications, where you go to a contact center, for example, and agents are able to understand you, troubleshoot your queries, and support you with very minimal human interventions. And it's partly driven by the automation side of it. And this is why it is making us more powerful. We are moving away from search to discovery. So what that means is we are telling the agents to do the right things, go to the various sources, compile, synthesize, and bring it to our sophisticated results, right? Similarly, content creations, we are able to create sophisticated contents from our needs just a fraction of seconds. We are telling the agents to manage the complex workflows which have been built, monitoring some events, and generating insights, such as giving some personalized support to your customers, and having to manage complex workflows and are being done by agents. And this disruption is going to happen. This is not just the 5 game-changing shifts we see, but it will continue to happen. It will continue to disrupt every industries. Despite that fact that we are at that stage, but still we have some skepticism in the minds of the decision makers and the CXOs. And part of it is, if you look at the left-hand side of the slide, which came from Goldman Sachs, CIO.com, and The Economist, that what is the value? We are moving away from take the money to show me the money, right? You go to any board meetings, you go to any shareholders, and they are telling that what is the return, what is the ROI, right? And this is where it is, because not on one dimension, it is a lot of issues that the organizations face. And part of it is they don't have the right AI strategy, they don't have the right talent, they don't have the right AI executions of the delivery model, they don't have the right governance structure, they don't have the right culture, and they're not bringing the right key stakeholders from the beginning of their journey. And the key stakeholders, if you are implementing generative AI, is your legal, the compliance side of it, your security office. And this is where one of the key areas that the skepticism has started to begin. And key is value creations. We believe that digital transformations or the AI transformation is all about value creations. And that means you have to persuade your CXOs or the decision makers that the AI transformation is going to create a value for the organizations, right? It's all about value creations. And if you look at the right-hand side, a few things, again, as I mentioned, less than 50% of the organizations across the industries have a well-defined AI strategy, which is a blueprint, which connects the dot from where you are and what is your North Star, what is your 5 to 10 years horizon, and what are the things that you must do to make it happen, right? And the key important is the concern in the security side of it. We are living in a world where the regulation is changing constantly, be it healthcare, be it pharmaceutical, be it financial sector side, you name it, right? And the generative AI, due to its nature, and definitely you need to persuade the decision makers. You have to bring the right constructs or the standards across the organizations to make sure that, okay, they see the benefit out of it, and the privacy and security are maintained across every components of your transformation. Now, when you look at the generative AI, the potential to transform, which we have started to witness, although there are a lot of good, really, things that we look at, such as I mentioned, efficiency gains and the cost reductions, the productivity gains, the hyper personalizations, the automation side of it. But still there is a risk, which is mainly on the privacy and security side of it, which is something that we'd like to cover in the remaining slides. While the adoption is happening across the industry, that we see moving from experimentations to now industrializations, moving from a chat bot to a just now agentic era, we see a lot of potentials. It's coming to happen. A couple of weeks back, and we see the advent of DeepSeek. Again, it's another revolution. It's going on an AI war, actually. And part of it is benefiting us. It has changed the way we live and our lives, right? Now, as I mentioned, now how during the AI transformations, when you solve the use cases, when you accelerate the use cases, what are some key techniques? And this is where the advent of RAG architecture was a key breakthrough, right? Which will enhance your AI accuracy from the LLM. We'll talk more about that. Reducing hallucinations, and if you do it properly, and it enables your real-time proprietary knowledge access, right? But the new risks emerge, even if it's a sophisticated architecture, but there are certain risks, vulnerabilities, your security threats, such as prompt injections, the data poisoning side of it, the regulatory complexity. Now, we are also living in countries, some countries which have data sovereignty rules. That means the data cannot go outside of their jurisdictions or outside of their the country and the border, right? How do you ensure that you make sure that the privacy and security are there, right? In the same time, you have to have the speed to market. So what is the trade-off? how would you balance the trade-off, right? So to fully scale AI, and organizations definitely must not only be ready to take on AI, but also they must integrate security, privacy, and compliance into their AI journey, into their development, the testing, and the deployment side of it. Now, how to manage the risk, right? The managing generative AI risk is managing new cybersecurity impacts. And there are three key impacts, as you see here. One is AI vulnerabilities, which is the risk we create when we accelerate or when you develop generative AI use cases into our business operations. And we'll talk more on that. And then we have AI-driven threats, right? Basically, we are now criminals are equipped with they know how to do the cyber attacks. Now we will continuously will see the number of cyber attacks will continue to increase. And then the third is also the companies, the organizations which are cybersecurity companies, they are already leveraging AI and generative AI into their offerings. So definitely we see the uptick on the industry landscape as well, that how the security side of it has been supported and has been provided as features into that kind of products. Now, in terms of the AI vulnerabilities, as we see, the impact, we see that, look, generative AI use cases, when you start to build some use cases on the generative AI, it creates any vulnerabilities. It creates some operational risk. It may also happen the legal risk, and I'll give you some examples in my next slide. So what that means is we as an organizations must adopt to a security frameworks, which is, at least it should do two things. One is the countrywide rules and regulations, that you cannot game that system. Basically, you have to abide by the rules. And the second is your organizational rules construct, right? What is appropriate security and the privacy principles that must happen across any AI use cases that you are going to accelerate, right? So your framework you have to define that framework, right? And there are a lot of frameworks that you can borrow from, or you can take an inspiration from, such as NIST, NIST Cybersecurity Framework. But as I mentioned, there has to be two levels. One is the country level or the jurisdiction level, if there is any. And the second is your industry or the organization that you are serving and the types of use cases that you are trying to solve, right? It's based on that. And you have to work with the legal compliance and security side from the very beginning, just to make sure. And then the AI-driven threats. Now we see that the criminals they leverage generative AI, right? Because they can quickly create some prompts, and we'll talk more about that as well. And the AI-enabled defense is we have moved away from just we have moved away from reactive to proactive, right? We don't solve when something happens. We rather predict, analyze, and we solve. And we'll also talk more about that. So these are the kind of how we manage the risk, and these are the kind of managing the new cybersecurity impacts. So if you look at the vulnerabilities on the left-hand side, you see a lot of examples here. It's in the public, like Samsung banned ChatGPT when there was a code leakage happened, sensitive code leakage happened. 38 terabyte of data accidentally exposed by Microsoft AI researchers, right? We also see the Red Cross Gen AI tool in exposing data of 500,000 people, sensitive data. So that means, we see a lot of potentials, but as an organizations, we must have the right tools and the constructs and the process and the governance to make sure that we are not exposing the security side of it, right? Or we are handling the privacy and security side of it. Similarly, if you look at the AI-driven threats, which is our second side of it, you see on the left-hand side, we have Q4 2022, and this is the November 2022, where the OpenAI released the ChatGPT interface, right? And you see the uptick in the dark web channels, basically, it's like humongous, and this is going to happen. This will continue to happen because attackers now have a lot of new tools, right? Phishing attempts will continue to happen. They will generate phishing emails just like quickly. They'll be able to distribute to the targets, and they will adapt the attack, right? So we must be ready to embrace the challenge. This is also opportunity to look at your security framework to the process which are already in place. And the final is the defense side of it. As I was telling that we have to move away from the identification of it. Earlier, what we used to do is we just identify and then we block that and we just provide the resolutions and we solve it. No, it should happen iteratively, continuously, and it should include your containment and the eradications, the recovery, and the lessons learned, right? So that the mistake or this kind of issues do not happen in future. So that at least you safeguard your processes, business processes driven by AI in such a way that it's proactive, right? Now, moving to the second topic on our agenda, which is the RAG, Retrieval Augmented Generations. I'll take just a couple of minutes here. And if we see why RAG is very popular, and I really don't want to spend much time here, because in a very simple terms, the large language model that we use, let's say, it has not seen your data, right? It has not seen your proprietary data because it is trained up to a certain date, right? Now, what are the best ways that okay, we get the right results from the other from the context that we set in? And RAG is very popular because you cannot fine tune all the time. It is a costly, expensive. Prompt engineering is definitely one of the ways. But if you look at the industry standpoint, 80%, more than 80% of the use cases that are happening are leveraging RAG, right? And advanced RAG. The architecture that I'm showing here is a naive RAG, and explaining the advanced RAG is beyond the scope of the presentations. But just to explain what this architecture, how this architecture works is, we have key components, and one is the data, right? So we have structured data and we have unstructured data. Unstructured data is the fuel of generative AI applications. And this is where organizations are also setting their data governance, because if you look at the earlier days, we were focusing mostly on data management of structured data, and it's rightly so. But now we are giving equal emphasis to the unstructured data as well, unstructured data management. So we are changing our data governance in such a way that we are giving the equal emphasis on structured data, unstructured data. So you have unstructured data, you have structured data. Then what we do is we have a chunking strategy, we split into chunks, and every chunks we translate into embeddings, leveraging OpenAI embeddings or Hugging Face embeddings or some open source embeddings such as Olama embedding. There are so many embeddings that we can do that. And then it basically converts the chunks into vector, and then we load the data into the vector database. So vector database, there are so many open source and closed databases such as Pinecone, VV8, you name it. There are a lot of FAISS, there are so many vector databases. Then what happens? So this is the step one of it, right? Where you bring your organization, the proprietary data, you load into a vector database. Then the user interface, the user query happens, and the user query gets translated into the same embeddings, which are used in the translation, during the translation of the chunks. And it does do a semantic search into a vector database, and it retrieves the top k documents, maybe top 2 documents or the top 3 documents, which are similar in terms of the semantic meanings, right? Then the retrieved documents are added into the mix of the query and some additional informations as a part of the prompt template, which is sent to the LLM, and then LLM will basically give you the answer, sophisticated answer. This is a very basic naive retrieval augmented generation approach. I have helped organizations on the advanced RAG approach, because if you look at every parts of this pipeline can be enhanced, not only the generation side of it or the retrieval side of it, but also the prompting side of it, but also the looking into your data stores. There are a lot of advanced techniques which we did not cover here, but this gives an opportunity to understand what RAG is and how in this architecture the privacy and security play a critical role if we want to really accelerate the AI transformation journey, which is something my friend and colleague Soumyodeep will cover from the next slide. Soumyodeep, you can continue.
Sure. Thanks, Meethun. So as we transition into the next section, we'll focus specifically on security and privacy risks, as Meethun stated, which are introduced by typical RAG-based AI systems. And we'll focus on how we can mitigate some of these challenges with a privacy-first architecture. So retrieval-augmented generation, or RAG, as you might know, it enhances the accuracy of AI models by retrieving specific informations or be it external knowledge or proprietary information, across various sources. But while it improves the reliability and reduces hallucination, it also introduces certain security vulnerabilities, right? But in practical settings, these vulnerabilities has to be addressed so that AI applications can be safely deployed in production systems, especially like in sensitive industries like healthcare, finance, and legal, right? So if we go to the next sections, we'll specifically talk about few areas where some of these leakages or some of these points of attacks can happen, right? So first is like data leak, right? So again, like data leak can happen at any point where data is at rest or data is on the move, and obviously like data set is like a key asset for any model. Second is there could be some sort of like prompt injection or like user authentication issue, right, which can lead to unauthorized access to the information or sensitive data. And third is like users can manipulate the models in certain ways so that it creates behaviors that are not really anticipated and like are malicious to the overall like system, and it creates adverse effects, right? So we'll talk about some of these like in a more practical settings as to like how these can happen, right? So if you go to the next slide. So for data privacy risks, right? So a practical example could be, and as we all know, right, that these large language models, it requires a significant amount of data sets to pre-train these models. And during some of these trainings, if like some sensitive information was passed, and it happens to memorize those information, that could be a potential way in which sensitive information could be leaked, right? Sometimes users are able to like manipulate like prompts, like we know about like SQL injections like in typical websites. So users can do similar attacks and be able to like manipulate the prompts in such ways that they are able to navigate the AI safety measures, right? It's also possible that attackers are able to like manipulate the model in or try to manipulate the model such that they are able to decode the embeddings in the vector database and thereby try to retrieve sensitive information, right? So these are like kind of various practical ways in which like different actors with malicious intentions can harm or can create abuse the systems, right? And all these really affects the compliance, right? Because for any industry, especially like these highly regulated industries, to operate, they would have to abide or comply to these either GDPR regulation if in Europe or HIPAA compliance in the US, etc., right? And it also like incurs a lot of like fines because of like data leakage, etc. But at the same time, it also causes a significant dent to reputation, not only just cost and reputation in terms of like to the customers as well as like stakeholders and so forth, right? So therefore it's important to understand like what are the key areas to tighten or to really act when we like implement these RAG based model in production. So if you go to the next slide, Mithun. So the key question again, as the key point of this discussion and the paper that we proposed is how we can optimize the security and privacy risks as we try to introduce these new patterns or emerging new technologies into the enterprise level for the organizations, right? So I think there are three areas of key focus. First is I think the zero trust AI security framework, which really focuses on strict authentication, right? So users who have like so restrict the users who have access to these systems so that obviously not any and everyone can access the system. And also, the users that have access to the system, apply specific role-based access so that they can only, have certain access and not full access to the system. And, based on their role, there would be certain constraints that will be applicable to their access, right? So that would ensure that, users can only do what they are intended to do, or how, like, what they are intended to get out of the system based on their specific role and function. Second is, there are ways in which we can try to prevent data leakage by de-identifying the data. And so that, like, we prevent leakage of sensitive information, which is a must in highly regulated industries. And, and this will make sure, and also, like, by encrypting the data at rest, and, like, by ensuring, like, secure protocol while the data is, communicated from point to point, right? So this will ensure that, like, it obviously that, it abides by all the compliance. And also the fact that it's not just, a set and forget thing, right? Because as my previous speakers have mentioned, that, like, malicious actors also have access to these technologies, right? So we have to continuously make sure and monitor these systems to make sure that these are, like, there are no adversarial uh, circumstances, or there are no malicious attacks of the system, right? So continuous monitoring and, like, continuous like, improvements or upgradation is required as we evolve, right? So I think next slide is a real world use case, right? Where, for sensitive nature of the project, we would not be able to name the customer, but here, a healthcare organization needed to implement a AI powered patient support assistant. So here, few of the techniques which we discuss, like the practical applications of this, were that they were a named entity recognition technique that was used to redact PII so that sensitive information was not exposed. Secondly, there were secure retrieval pipelines, which I was talking about, the encryption and the secure protocol to ensure that there is encrypted API access to the electronic health records data, and then strict role-based access to all the users to prevent unauthorized access. So this really, ensured that the system is secure and help to improve patient trust on the AI adoption and across all the internal clinical teams as well. And there were no instance of, like, sensitive data exposure in this AI driven workflow implementation. And it also ensured that it was in compliance with all the major, like, compliance frameworks. With that, I would like to conclude my section. Thanks for your attention, and we'll be happy to take any questions.